All right, gamers. I only got 2 words for you guys today, and that is holy shit. So, for anyone who hasn't been following the Lost Ark news for the last week or so, Smilegate, which is the company that makes Lost Ark, just hosted their convention called Loa-On, where they announced a ton of huge updates coming in Korea in the very near future. They're getting huge things in July, August, September, all the way into October, as well as things that they announced for the end of the year a little bit, or touched on at least, without specific release dates yet. We've been kind of sitting over here in NAEU kind of wondering, when are we going to get these updates? Because some of these are huge, absolutely game changers. Anyway, today they released the 2024 summer roadmap changes. And for anyone who didn't hear what's going on from Loa-On, we're going to go over some of the stuff that they've announced for us here in NA and EU that's going to be released July, August, September, as well as beyond. But the big things that I want to touch on are coming out in July and September, like huge game changers, absolutely insane updates. So for anyone who wants to read this whole thing, I will add a link to it in the description. You can go through all of it at your own pace. But for now, I'm going to glance over some of the things that I think are really, really huge and try to maybe get into a little bit more detail than they do for anything that people are confused about or might be confused about, because I followed all the news that came from Loa-On and came straight from Smilegate. I followed it pretty in depth. I just don't want anyone to be confused about the things that they're worried about. Okay, now again, we don't have all of the details of all of this stuff, so bear with me. Any of the big changes that are coming that we don't have details on, we should know in the next month or so, because the big thing that we're getting in September that people are worried on the fence about is coming out in KR next month. So we will get relayed all of the information straight from them, and we'll know exactly how to deal with that big update. Okay, so first we'll talk about July. One of the biggest things that they've announced that's coming in July is a solo raid mode. That means you're able to go into raids, everything all the way up to and including Voldus, which is every gold earning end game activity except for Theamine, which is the most recent thing. It also won't include Echidna, which is coming out next week for us. So that stuff you're just still going to have to find groups for. But I'm sure they'll update it as time goes on and make more things soloable. For now, this is huge. You still are going to earn gold. It's going to be less, but you still earn gold from it. You still gain materials. The biggest difference is that you don't have to worry about getting gatekept and spend a ton of time in Lobby Finder Simulator. What this also means is for any players who maybe you're just antisocial and don't want to make friends or don't want to play with people, they can still play the game and they can still contribute to everything that's happening in the community. And then the other big thing is anyone who has raid anxiety or is really struggling to find people who are willing to help them learn these raids, you can go in and practice a whole bunch of the mechanics and stuff on your own now before you go into a group setting and essentially put what you've learned to good use. We've been wanting this for a long time. Again, the announcement happened like last week on Friday, so we knew it was coming, but we didn't know it was going to be this soon. This is literally next month. The next huge change that's coming out in July, so again, this is in 1 month from today, is the honing decrease. So all of your characters, all of your alts, any new or returning players will have an easier time getting their characters geared up and honing them. Not only is this huge for honing, but there is also now going to be a permanent 5x3 engraving support. And for anyone who doesn't know what that means, it essentially is having a set of engravings built on your character. This is something that new players have been stressed about because trying to figure out how to build your characters early on in the game is just, it's really rough. And now nobody has to worry about it. You have permanent 5x3 engraving support for all of your characters. And lastly, quite possibly one of the most exciting changes, at least for players like me, is this addition of gems that are going to be available to help player progression. It says here gems that will be available to help player progression. At Loa-On, the way they described this as was all of these raid rewards, these marks, so the Mayhem marks, the Phantom marks, the Mark of Plague, these are all getting combined into one currency. That's also a win, way less confusing. Less currencies is always a win. There's going to be a new shop where you can spend these things, and one of the items in this shop is supposed to be a little pouch that you can spend these on to get a character-bound level 7 gem. Now, what that means is that you can build all of your alts to be in full level 7s without having to spend 10,000 gold per gem, or grind out each gem for however long it takes you to get level 7s. New players are taking forever to build level 7s these days. What's amazing about this is that everyone who has level 7s across their entire roster, whether it's like your top 6 alts or your bottom whatever, your low pangs, everyone's going to be able to have a fully built character without spending an insane amount of gold. This is amazing for new players. This is amazing for returning players. This is amazing for veteran players who want to have fun playing characters that they wouldn't normally play but don't want to spend the gold on them. Absolutely huge update. Okay, the next thing is little. They're removing a gate from Voldis. It's gate 3 is what it is. The next thing we're getting in July, no details on it yet, but it's going to be another endgame progression event. So this is what we would consider the Super Makoko Express, the power passes that they give out for free, as well as they named it in here, the Path of the Soul Eater or Descent into Darkness stuff, the stuff that allows you to go like way beyond 1580. I'm hoping this is something that allows players to get characters to 1620, which is, we'll talk about it later, why you need to get to 1620 or why I think it would be nice for everyone to be able to have a character at 1620. But this is another just huge update for July. Okay, next is what we are getting in September. If you've been following, there have been talks that we are getting tier 4. Now, a new tier essentially means a bit of a reset on everyone's character progression. It seems like they've made it work in a way where a lot of the investment you've put in your characters is still going to carry over. Your elixirs, your transcendence, even some of your gems, all of that stuff is still going to have value when tier 4 comes out. It's not just becoming completely irrelevant. So I don't really see any downside to going into tier 4. Personally, I'm super happy about this. Pretty much everyone that I've talked to is pumped about it. Now, of course, going into tier 4, going into a new tier means that a lot of the systems are going to change really quickly. Here's what we know. In order to get into tier 4, you need to have a character at 1620, which is why I want this new pass, this new endgame progression event to allow players to get to 1620. So everything in tier 3, all the stuff that we've been doing for the last year and a half, 2 years, isn't becoming completely irrelevant. Not yet, at least. So don't stress about like getting all of your characters to 1620. There will still be plenty of players playing their alts down in tier 3. You don't need to worry about that. The next thing we know about going into tier 4 is that the engraving system is going to have the opportunity to change. Now, what that means is you can keep things the way they are on your characters, or you can swap to the new system, and you can swap back and forth freely whenever you want. The new system seems pretty complicated and we don't have all the details to it yet, but it sounds exciting. Probably something that players are going to have to work towards a little bit instead of just swapping right away, but it's a new way to gain progression on your characters. And really at the end of the day, it's an MMO. That's why we're all playing it for, you know what I mean? Okay, the next big change coming with tier 4 is the gem system. Now, I know plenty of you have like level 10 gems across a bunch of your characters, or maybe 9s or 8s, or maybe you sold all your gems because you quit the game. There will be a new tier of gems. So all of the players who want to return, who sold all your gems, don't stress about it. You're going to start farming new gems, tier 4 gems. All of the players who have spent a ton of gold or money or whatever it is on your tier 3 gems, your level 10s or whatever, again, don't worry about it. They both will have value in the new system. Tier 3 gems will retain the value they have currently. So a level 10 damage gem that increases your skill by 40% damage will continue to increase that skill's damage by 40%. It doesn't change at all. However, if you choose to, you can transfer that level 10 gem to a level 8 with a new vendor or a new system or something that they're bringing in. So your tier 3 gems can be turned into tier 4 gems, but they will lose 2 levels. So 10s will go to 8s, 9s will go to 7s, so on, so on. And the tier 4 gems actually have more effects to them as well, as opposed to in tier 3, we just have cooldown reduction and damage increase. Now, every single gem gives you an attack power increase, as well as the cooldown or the damage. And we also have special support effects that the gems will increase as well. So far, I think we've only seen like a damage gem that increases the shielding of a skill, but I think people are expecting to hopefully see damage gems that will increase the damage buff of your buffing skills. I don't know yet. We probably won't know about that until closer to Korea's release date in July. Okay, so the engraving system is changing, which means the ability stone system is changing. All of your ability stones that you've cut, again, will still keep value. They're not completely useless anymore. If you hate cutting stones, you don't have to cut new stones. but you might want to because of the way the system is changing. Again, that's another more complicated topic. But what this means is that a bigger variety of stones are gaining more value. Again, this system gets a little complicated, and we can talk about it another time if you guys want. Just let me know. But for now, we'll leave it at that. Next is the accessory system. They're removing all engravings from accessories in tier 4, I believe. They will continue to have additional effects, except now instead of stats as the additional effects, there's going to be different lines that you can roll on your accessories, kind of similar to what it's like rolling bracelets. There's a whole list of things that we saw in a screenshot from Loa On, off in another document that Saint has been putting together, and I'll link that down in the description as well for anyone who's like really interested in deep diving into all of this stuff that's coming with tier 4. But it's complicated, and it's like a whole nother thing. Next, we're getting an update to the card system. This one's also huge for new and returning players. For veterans, it doesn't really matter quite as much. Okay, the biggest thing to note is, so right now, when you are farming your card set out, whether it's Light of Salvation or whatever it is, you get a bonus at 18 Peace Awakening, and then you get the final bonus at 30 Peace Awakening. And that's a big gap from 18 to 30. Like, that takes a long time. That's months and months and months of grinding for some people before you get that extra 8% damage. What they're doing is pretty big in my eyes. They're adding a halfway point between 18 and 30. So at 24, you will gain half of the increase. They're basically splitting up the 30 Peace Awakening into 2 different bonuses. So there's going to be a 4% at 24 and another 4% at 30, which again is maybe very minimal or maybe nothing for the veteran players. But for new and returning players, this is huge. It's a nice little damage power spike and a nice little goal to work towards that's not so daunting as going all the way to 30. Amazing. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about, this one's pretty little. We don't have a ton of details on it yet, but is a new combat system update. So we're getting a new combat system called Perfect Block. And essentially what it's going to be is a new button for you to press that allows you to parry certain skills. So think of the way that counters work in the game. Boss flashes a certain color, you hit a counter, and then certain things happen depending on what the fight is like, or stagger or destruction or whatever, all of the different combat systems we have. Now there's a new system where the boss is going to flash a certain color maybe during a skill, and you're going to stand in front of it and press a button, and you're going to parry the boss's attack or block it, I guess is what they're trying to say. It's the perfect block, which, you know, as we know from other games, is kind of more like a parry. It looks really cool. It's adding more depth to the combat. I'm super happy about this. There's talks about new battle items and changes to some dot damage and stuff. I don't really know much about that yet. Some smaller things they're increasing. Character's level cap is going to 70. They're also increasing the rate at which you'll earn experience. So don't like stress about, oh my God, it took so long to get to 60. It's going to take so long to get to 70. It probably will take a while, but it's, you know, once it's done, it's done. It's just another grind. And that means their skill levels are going up to 14. So you can put your skills to 13 at level 65 and to 14 at level 70. It also means we're getting a ton of new skill points all the way from 61 to 70. The roster level is also increasing. The max roster level is increasing from 300 to 400. The trade skill level is also increasing to 70. Then we're getting a couple new dungeons. Again, because it's the beginning of tier 4, this is like the introduction to tier 4. One of these dungeons you're going to have to do to get your hands on the tier 4 gear. Now, real quick, we'll talk about the tier 4 gear. Once you hit 1620, you're going to go to a new zone. You're going to level through that continent. And then at the end of that continent, you're going to get access to this dungeon. And in this dungeon, you're going to get these drops for new gear, and you're going to gear transfer your 1620 gear onto this new gear. And it's going to immediately bring your item level from 1620 to 1640 on each piece of gear. So that means everyone going into tier 4 is immediately gaining 20 item levels, which also means that everyone who is 1620 is gaining access to all of the new raids that unlock between 1620 and 1640. So that's hard mode Theamine, that's hard mode Echidna, and it will also be a new raid coming out at the same time called Behemoth. It's a 16-person raid. It's going to be fun. I think it's going to be fun, personally. The next dungeon that they're adding could be a bit of a game changer for some of us. So it's essentially replacing Chaos Dungeon Daily for players who get to tier 4. At least that's my understanding of it. It uses all 100 of your energy to enter Chaos Dungeons, so you only have to do it once a day. Everyone was asking for Chaos Dungeons to get nerfed, so you only had to do them once a day, and I mean, we're kind of getting it. At least that's what it seems like. Again, we don't have all the details on this, so take this part with a grain of salt. There's a couple extra changes happening here. I don't think they're nearly as important as those big ones. I am so excited for July, September updates. I think this has the potential to bring back tons of players to Lost Ark, as well as bring in tons of new players, as well as make the current player base way happier. I hope so. Okay, before I go, there's like 2 more little things, they're kind of big, that we have to talk about that are coming in what says is Q4 and fall. Whatever the hell that means. We don't have dates yet, but it's things to look forward to on top of all of this other stuff that we're getting. So the first thing is a new raid. Akan is coming back. He's got the soul of Vulcan. So you get to fight 2 of your favorite bosses, at least the 2 of my favorite bosses, together at the same time. And then after you beat them in the first gate of this new raid, we're going to go fight this new guy. If you go watch the teaser videos for it, looks pretty sick. I'm going to be honest. Then we've got the Arc passive system. This is kind of what we were talking about before, replacing the engraving system. There's also a little bit more to it. This seems like it's going to be kind of a game changer, a bit of a complicated system. I haven't seen enough details on it yet to confidently tell you what's going to happen with it. What I will say is it looks like there's going to be a lot more customizability for everyone's characters and the way that you want to play, like that fits your play style. Again, this is fingers crossed. We've heard like a couple little things about what might happen in here, aside from the engraving changes and the bracelet changes and the gearing changes, essentially. One of the examples we got was that gun lancers should have the ability to customize their spacebar, making them dash forward instead of backwards. So that little back hop that all you non-gun lancer players hate because, you know, it's hard to get used to, you will have the opportunity to play a gun lancer and not have to deal with that anymore. They only gave us really one example. The rest would be complete speculation at this point, but this opens up a lot of doors for a lot of customization options for a lot of classes. I'm hoping, again, fingers crossed. Okay, and then the last thing, which for some people might be the most exciting part of this whole thing, is a new system called Hyper Awakening. So if you thought having an awakening was cool, now you get a Hyper Awakening. The name is so funny because it's like they literally just took the most obvious word that you would add to try to hype up a system and they called it the Hyper Awakening. I think it's funny. I just think it's so funny. Anyway, this system looks super cool. Everyone's awakenings are evolving. They're gaining like a meter, like a power increase while you fight, while you I assume achieve success in combat to a point where your awakening becomes evolved and it becomes a hyper awakening. Like it actually becomes just a better version of the awakening that you've been pressing all along. On top of this, there's a tiny other little thing that we really don't know much about yet, which is going to be a whole new skill slot. There's going to be a completely new button that's getting added. It's going to be right in between your current awakening and all of your other skills. So we're gaining a new button to press on every single class, supposedly. We don't have any details on what these skills are going to do, what their cooldowns are going to look like, how much damage they're going to do, if they're going to have gems attached to them. We have like no information on these at all, except for that the only skills you can put in this slot are the new skills that are getting added. So it's only going to be like one of 2 or 3 options that you're going to be able to put in this new slot. This could completely change the meta. This could completely change the way some classes play. This could create a whole bunch of new variety in all of the current classes, which will make up for the fact that we aren't getting a new class for a little while. Overall, this update is absolutely massive. I cannot wait to hear what everyone has to say about everything that's coming in July, September, and even afterwards. If you have any specific questions about maybe some deeper details about some of these things, come by the Twitch stream. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that I know the answers to. Again, we don't have all the details for everything, so I might not have all the answers. Throw the question in your comments if that's easier. I'll be happy to respond to anything. If any of you plan on coming back to Lost Ark because of this, or plan to start playing it now because of all of these changes, I would love to hear about it. And we are always happy to have new people to play with. So come on by. Anyway, guys, I hope you're all as excited about all of this stuff as I am. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope this answers any questions or concerns that some of you may or may not have had. Thanks for watching.